Hello, this is another episode of Moraine Reads. I'm Joe from the library. The novel is one of the great works of the Harlem Renaissance, Nella Larson's Passing. And back in 2021, a film that was produced, directed, and written by a woman by the name of Rebecca Hall premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and was picked up by Netflix. And I happened to see this online. This is something that the um, publication Vanity Fair does in their online thing, where they get a director to talk about how a scene from one of their movies, their recent movie, was produced. All right. On your right is the writer, director, producer, Rebecca Hall. And on your left is the star of the film, Tessa Thompson. And they do a great job of talking about this. And I was like, I had always wanted to read this book. I don't know what kept me from doing it. But then I was like, well, there's a movie. I'll watch that. So I talked a couple of friends of mine into viewing it, and we really liked it a great deal. One of the things is that we couldn't figure out a couple of things, and anyways, and we'll get into that as I talk about um, the book. So what happens is Irene Redfield has got this very safe, secure life with her husband, who's a doctor, and her two sons. And she happens to be back in Chicago, where she grew up. Okay. She's met a bunch of people that she used to know. And they ask and talk about different people nobody's heard from in the last 12 years since graduation. So they're probably about 30. And one of them is a woman named Claire Kendry. And everybody says, "Oh, oh no, no, I don't know what happened. Oh, Claire Kendry. Oh, she didn't have an easy life." Okay, she was you know, um, graduation sort of, or graduating class poster child of a rough life. Okay, so now Irene is out shopping, getting ready to go back to New York. She stops in at a restaurant on a rooftop to get out of the sweltering Chicago heat. I don't know if Nella Larson lived in Chicago, but boy, she got it down. All right, and this is what happens. It takes several pages in the book. In the movie, it's 3 or 4 minutes. But anyways, it is. And gradually there rose in Irene a small inner disturbance, odious and hatefully familiar. She laughed softly, but her eyes flashed. Did that woman, could that woman, somehow know that here before her very eyes, on the roof of the Drayton, sat a Negro? And the Drayton is a substitute for the Drexel Hotel, just to give you, you know, the history. Absurd. Impossible. White people were so stupid about such things, for all that they usually asserted they were able to tell, and by the most ridiculous means. Fingernails, palms of hands, shape of ears, teeth, and other equally silly rot. They always took her for an Italian, a Spaniard, a Mexican, or gypsy. Never, when she was alone, had they even remotely seemed to suspect she was a Negro. No, the woman sitting there staring at her couldn't possibly know. Nevertheless, Irene felt in turn anger, scorn, and a fear sliding over her. It wasn't she was ashamed of being a Negro. or even having it declared. It was the idea of being ejected from any place, even in the polite, tactful way that the Drayton would probably do it, that disturbed her. But she looked boldly this time, back into the eyes still frankly intent upon her. They did not seem hostile or resentful. Rather, Irene felt that they were ready to smile if she would. Nonsense, of course. Feeling past. And she turned away with the firm intention of keeping her gaze on the lake. Suddenly, her small fright increased. Her neighbor had risen and was coming towards her. What was going to happen now? Pardon me, the woman said pleasantly, but I think I know you. Her slightly husky voice held a dubious note. Looking up at her, Irene's suspicions and fears vanished. There was no mistaking the friendliness of that smile, or resisting its charm. Instantly she surrendered to it and smiled too, and she said, I'm afraid you're mistaken. Why, of course I know you, the other exclaimed. Don't tell me you're not Irene Westover. Or do they still call you Renee? In the brief second before her answer, Irene tried to vainly recall where and when this woman could have known her. There in Chicago? And before her marriage? That much was plain. High school? College? YWCA committees? High school, most likely. Yes, I'm Irene Westover. And though no one's called me Renee anymore, it's good to hear it and the name again. And you? She hesitated, ashamed that she couldn't remember, and hoping the sentence would be finished for her. Don't you know me? Not really? Renee, I'm sorry, but just at this minute I can't seem to place you. Irene studied the lovely creature standing beside her for some clue to let her identify. Who could she be? Where and when had they met? And through her perplexity there came the thought that this trick which her memory had played her was for the same reason more gratifying than disappointing to her old acquaintance, that she didn't mind not being recognized. Perhaps, Irene began, you. The woman laughed, a lovely laugh, a small sequence of notes that was like a trill, almost like ringing of a delicate bell fashioned of a precious metal, a tinkling. Irene drew a quick, short breath. Claire, she exclaimed. Not really Claire Kendry. So great was her astonishment that she started to rise. No, no, don't get up, Claire commanded and sat down herself. You've simply got to stay and talk. We'll have something more. Tea? Fancy meeting you here. It's simply too lucky. Now, what Irene is going to find out is that Claire is passing as white. That's why the title. And she is married to a rich businessman who is an outspoken white racist. And so, in my opinion, reading it, I'm thinking to myself, Claire's playing with fire. Oh my goodness, is she ever? And she pursues uh, uh, contact with Irene, and she pursues it adamantly. And the one of the questions of the book is, why does Irene let her in, knowing that this can be nothing but trouble? But she does let her in, and one of the things, to her house, to her home, her family, her friends, at three different events, and the story ends at a party at one of Irene's friends' houses, and something happens, and when the movie ended, my two friends that I watched movies with and I looked at each other and said, "What just happened?" Because it's that subtle. All right. So then I turned around and read the book. I had always meant to, I'd always wanted to. Okay. And I got to the end and I said, "What just happened?" So doggedly, I returned the final chapter 4 more times. Okay. And on the third more pass, I said, "Oh." And on the fourth, I said, "Oh, that's what happened." So, should you read the book or see the movie or do both, which I both recommend? They are different. They're always gonna be. It's just the way it is. But anyways, and you get to the end and you say, "I don't know what happened." Come find me in the library. I'll tell you what happened. Once again, this is another episode of Moraine Reads. The novel is Passing by the great writer Nella Larson. Thanks for listening. Keep on reading. Bye bye.